Hello and welcome to the Grand Prix podcast and the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix. Woo, 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 woo. And at the time of recording, happy Easter, everyone.
Happy Easter to those who celebrate.
Yes, we are inclusive.
Exactly.
But not forcing.
No.
So, yeah, either happy Easter or just happy day.
Happy day. Happy race day.
Happy race day.
Happy
Happy
Easter.
bank holiday for the UK girlies.
Yes.
And men.
But and those that aren't, just happy. We hope you're happy.
Yeah.
That's it. No more agenda.
That's the end of the podcast. Thank you for listening.
So it is the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, or Jeddah, as it is fondly known. And of course, we start all of our episodes with Izzy's quali lap.
We do.
But we have a confession to make, listeners. We went out.
Honestly, you lot waiting for an episode. We were out.
We were out. We had fun.
Yeah.
Maybe a bit too much fun, but it then meant that we didn't actually watch qualifying. So Izzy's quali lap is going to be a hodgepodge from news articles, qualifying highlights videos, and
Barely that.
on the right side, you might actually do this week in time. Let's see.
I haven't actually watched qualifying, so I haven't got the same level of storytelling that I like to weave into every one of these. So maybe that'll be a benefit for everyone, or maybe it'll be even less useful than it normally is. I don't know. We'll have to see.
Do you have a penalty for this one?
No.
I thought
Shut
we said
up.
12 seconds.
No. Shut up.
Right. As we know, Max Verstappen put his Red Bull on pole position for the race, and you've got 1 minute and 27 seconds, which is what he set as his quali time. Are you ready?
Born ready.
Are you steady?
Born steady.
Not yesterday, you weren't. All right, 3, 2, 1, send it.
In Q1, Verstappen laid down the gauntlet for P1 with a strong lap, but McLarens were right on his tail for P2 and P3. Rookie Antonelli continued his stellar run, grabbing P4. Tsunoda squeezed with an impressive P5 from the tricky Red Bull that he has to drive, while Williams showed promise with Albon in P6 and Sainz in P8. Hamilton struggled in P9 with his Ferrari, but Gasly found pace for Alpine into P10. Stroll, Doohan, Hülkenberg, Ocon and Bortoleto were the unlucky ones missing out in Q2. In Q2, the top 3 spots saw Norris, Verstappen and Piastri trading times. The Mercedes duo surged to P4 and P5, while Tsunoda made a last lap dash to secure P7. Ferrari seemed to be off the ball, while Leclerc in P6 and Hamilton just scraping into Q3 and P10. Gasly kept his momentum going, landing P9. Albon, Lawson, Alonso, Hadjar and Behrman were all knocked out in Q2. Q3, drama erupted as Norris's McLaren took a wild ride over a curb, ending his qualifying with a crash and a red flag. As the track went green again, provisional pole was up for grabs, with Russell, Verstappen and Piastri were all trading sector times as Piastri takes it, only Verstappen to steal it away with a sensational lap that was quicker by 1/100th of a second in an effort that was simply lovely. Piastri had to settle for P2 with Russell in P3. Leclerc could only manage P4 with Antonelli in P5 with yet another consistent performance. P6 was Sainz to the Williams. P7 was Hamilton, who was still leaving lap time on the table as he struggled to get the handle on his Ferrari. Tsunoda managed P8. Gasly and Alpine managed a brilliant P9 and Norris stayed P10 after not being able to compete.
Well done, and she did it with time to spare.
Thank goodness.
That's what happens when you aren't as prepared.
Maybe you shouldn't watch the
At some point.
fireworks.
Maybe I just read out the running order. How about that?
Well, there's not as much drama in that.
No, that's true. That's very true.
Okay, so are we ready to watch the race? See if Lando Norris can keep his championship alive from P10.
It's slipping away quickly.
Well, there you have it. That's Jeddah. And a third race win out of 5 for Piastri, and 2025 has a new Drivers' Championship leader.
Yes,
Yeah.
well done to Piastri.
Yeah, that was an interesting race. I don't think that Norris has been keeping a good momentum with this triple header, and I think the person that has been Piastri. So I think currently, I think that the standings reflect exactly what's going on for both of those McLarens.
Yeah,
Just to note generally on the race, I thought that it was going to be a lot more exciting than it actually ended up being, because the first lap we had a crash, which was Gasly and Tsunoda, and they were both out. And I know that you were saying before the race started that Saudi Arabia has a track record of always having a safety car.
Yeah, and it didn't lose that record.
That is very true.
Safety
car drama.
There you go.
Not even a minute in and there's a safety car.
Jeddah has kept its record of 100% safety cars on races.
There was a safety car right from the beginning, but no more crashes happened. So it didn't end up being as exciting for the rest of the race, but it was still a very good one.
Yeah, I think it was still exciting just because of the fact that obviously on the first lap, Max Verstappen got a time penalty. 5 seconds for overtaking off the track or leaving the track and gaining an advantage, I should say instead. And then he obviously needed to try and build a gap to Piastri to try and make sure that penalty didn't mean anything. And that was exciting to watch, for me at least.
It cost him the win, having that 5-second penalty, because I think otherwise he would have either been closer to overtaking Piastri or would have actually overtaken him and would have gotten first place. But Piastri ended up getting it, and he finally broke the pattern of this being a qualifying race.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it was interesting because I think Max knows very well that for incidents that happen on the first lap of a race, the stewards are normally more lenient in terms of giving out penalties and punishments for overtakes that are done outside of the white lines. And I think that essentially he wasn't going to make the corner. He knew he wasn't. So he went out the outside and then managed to gain the place and hoped that maybe they would be a bit more lenient on it.
Which I'm noticing is a pattern for him, particularly in Jeddah. He likes that move, doesn't he?
Yeah, he does. This is yeah, I was trying to be a bit more lenient with Max. But yeah, he's a bit of a bully around Jeddah. There's no lying about it. I don't think he's in a place in the championship or the season where he needed to do such an aggressive move. It was a bit of a bully boy tactic, and I didn't really think he needed to, because he's got a brilliant amount of understanding around the DRS detection lines, and he's got a car that, even though, comes on Friday, says, haven't got any balance, haven't got any grip, not happy whatsoever. And then the mechanics and the people in that team just do the sensational turnaround.
They work overtime, don't they?
Yeah, my God. They work like nothing on earth. So the fact that they were able to get it back in a window where his driving brought that car onto pole. It didn't deserve to be there on merit. So Max delivered there. But I thought that he kind of boxed himself into, I'm just going to just do this move. But I didn't think he needed to.
Yeah.
I think he still could have got the win. And then he got the 5-second time penalty, coupled with the fact that whenever you do a 5-second time or any sort of time penalty, the team are always more cautious that you're not serving the penalty correctly. So most of the time they end up sitting there stationary for longer for fear of saying, the stewards coming back and saying you didn't serve your time penalty correctly, which I think happened with Esteban Ocon.
Yes, it did.
A few years ago. He had a time penalty and I think they only held him stationary for 4-point-something seconds. So then he got given a 10-second time penalty.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So then he had to go and serve another penalty. Yeah, because he hadn't sat there long enough. So in the end, teams end up making their cars sit there for longer so that they can make sure they've served it. But he ended up having an 8.3-second stop.
Yeah.
That's going to cost you.
Which, when you take away that 5 seconds, then means he was stationary for 3.3, which we know that Red Bull don't do 3.3-second pit stops, really. A general pit stop is usually around 2.5. So, they obviously kept him still for a bit longer than they needed to without anyone working on it, just to make sure that they had served the penalty properly.
But another week of the Red Bull pit stops being a huge talking point for the team, because obviously last week we had the lights that weren't working. They're meant to go red when you're waiting to get your pit stop service. Then when you're ready to go, the sensor detects it, and then they turn green. They can drive.
Shit show last week.
Yeah, but then this week, then you could look back at Max's race story and you think the seconds that he had doing that fight. I mean, the 5-second time penalty was the reason that he wasn't able to get ahead anyway. But on top of that, then having a bit of a slow stop around that wasn't great. So I don't know. I think Max. I think he ended up downplaying his own race by doing a silly move at the start of the race that kind of cursed it.
I did love his response on the radio when he was told by his engineers that he's getting the 5-second penalty, and he said, "Well, that's simply effing lovely."
Yes. Yeah.
He flipped his own script there. I mean, a talking point for Max coming into this weekend. There's been a rumor around Max and Aston Martin that, now that Aston Martin have enticed Adrian Newey to go from Red Bull over to the Honda team, apparently they're set to go after Max Verstappen. An Italian publication said that they claimed a $300 million contract was being prepared to Verstappen. They claimed the offer would be 3 seasons, valued at $100 million a year, making it easily the most lucrative deal in F1 history. Verstappen is already the owner of the most expensive contract in Formula One, with Red Bull paying a reported $55 million a year for him.
$55 million a year.
Yes.
It's crazy.
But then you see what he does in qualifying at Jeddah this weekend and you realise why.
Yeah.
When asked for comment, Aston Martin said they remained committed to their current lineup. Both Fernando Alonso and Lance Stroll remain under contract next season, but they did not outright deny the speculation. And of course, we had Max this weekend when Crofty from Sky Sports F1 asked him, are you rumoured to stay at Red Bull? Are you not? Max said, you stick to commentating, I'll stick to driving. How about that? Which was a brilliant way to kind of deflect it back onto, mind your business on my mind, motherfucker. But he didn't say no. He just said, mind my business. That's that.
And also, despite him supposedly shutting down the rumours, a source close to Max has also gone to the press and said that he's actually thinking of taking a sabbatical next year, seeing what the rules and the regs kind of look like in 2026, what the cars look like, and then for 2027 deciding what car he wants to be in.
Do many F1 drivers take sabbaticals?
Not really, no.
Not by choice as well. You could argue that Sergio Perez is currently on a sabbatical because there's also rumours going on that he is very, very close to signing for Cadillac for 2026.
Oh.
So you could call this year a sabbatical for him. You could also just say he was fired and is desperately on LinkedIn trying to find a new role.
Open to work.
So, with Max, obviously he drives with a certain level of aggression.
Yeah.
And he drives to win a championship, but I wonder if he takes a year sabbatical, if he's going to lose that edge when he comes back, and he wouldn't be coming back with the same sort of aggression.
I find it highly unlikely that he would take a sabbatical.
Well, he's going to have a child. He might want to be around for the first year of his newborn's life.
But his child's going to have a nice trust fund.
That's say. Even not she goes to Aston. Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that Max is heartless or that he won't want to spend time with his newborn and his partner or whatever. My point is that Max Verstappen is operating at the highest level within the pinnacle of motorsport currently. Anybody can tell you he is the best driver on that grid. And that level of momentum sees you be able to want to compete at the level that you're at, which is the highest level. So I don't see him wanting to go off and do a sabbatical. He says a lot of the time, I'll probably do it until 2028 and then, I'll leave. But I mean, in 2021, he said, it's just a championship. It's not a big deal. He won, he was crying, hugging his dad. So don't act cool. I know you care about it. And I mean, it's not like I don't feel he'll be the type that would go into commentating. He's not going to bring out a fashion range. He's not going to do this. He cares about racing. He's old school like that.
Well,
he cares about racing and nothing else.
He detests commentators, so no idea.
He does. Yeah, he does. But he hated Las Vegas, if you remember. He was like, it's just a show. I want to go racing. He's in his downtime, he does esports, he does gaming. Everything about what he does is about racing. Yeah. So I don't think you're going to take a year away from work, because to Max, I don't think it is work. I think
he might be trying to create the first baby to win a go-karting race.
Maybe, but I think he'll want that 5th championship, and if he doesn't get it this year, because I personally think, I'm saying it like as a hot take, I think Piastri, could easily take this, as the whole world does as well. But if he doesn't win it this year, currently Red Bull are sitting for 3rd in the championship standings, I believe. So they're not in any way close to getting the constructors as it stands. If he's not going to get the drivers' championship, he's either going to want to move teams, recalibrate, but I do not think he's going to want to just leave. I just don't think that's a Max Verstappen thing to do. He's not a quitter.
Can I ask you both something as F1 fans?
Absolutely not. How dare you?
Podcast over. With Oscar Piastri currently now leading the Drivers' Championship, was he at a similar level last year? I don't remember Piastri being one of the names that popped out for me, because I knew of Max Verstappen, obviously, because he was leading nearly every single race last year. I knew of Lewis Hamilton because of his legacy. I knew of Charles Leclerc, and I knew of Lando.
Sexy.
Yes, exactly.
Not as much as Carlos Sainz.
Oh, yes, sorry. That's a good question. And Lando Norris, because he was starting to win towards the end. But Piastri was just not a name that popped up for me. So to see he's won 3 races now for 2025. He's obviously the biggest name currently for the season. Was he at that same level, or has he had like a huge amount of growth since 2024?
I think he's had a huge amount of growth. I mean, he joined in 2023 for the start of the season then, and McLaren had an absolutely a stinker of a race. It was poo. It was a poo race. I remember very vaguely, I'm sure other people listening probably remember it a lot better than I can, but they had a problem with the pressure in their car or something. So every couple of laps, Lando had to keep coming into the pits, and they were sort of pumping the car with fluid or whatever they needed to be able to carry on. They were 19th and 20th. They weren't even battling each other. They were just trundling around.
Lando no wins.
I mean, it was the team was at the worst that they were. I remember there was lots of stories and criticism against Zach Brown because they felt that every 2 seconds he was just getting more advertisements on the car, and everyone was saying, what's the bloody point? No one can see the bloody car. It's at the back of the grid. There were back markers, so which means that the leaders of the race, they'd have to move out of the way for the leaders of the race because they'd get lapped. There was no performance from the car, so you didn't get to see what Piastri had to show. He obviously then had this rather scandalous entry into the sport because he was an Alpine reserve driver. Alpine were going to take up the option to hire him. He didn't sign a contract. They didn't communicate that. They put it out in the press. He said, no, I'm going to McLaren. Everyone thought he was a shady cow. Then he started. Then the car wasn't working. So everyone thought he was a bit of a crap shady cow. And then when it came to 2024, the second half of the season, they just seemed to get that car working, and they brought upgrades. And suddenly there was a run of races where they had the edge over Red Bull, but Norris was 100%. He had the edge over Piastri consistently in qualifying. He was able to just find extra performance from that car.
I would say that Piastri was consistently good.
It
wasn't like Lando was, amazing and Piastri was poo. Like, they were both really, really good. It's just that Lando was coming out on top.
Yeah, well, Lando had more experience in that car, more experience, more bedded into the team. You've seen Piastri's sort of demeanour and personality. He's kind of a no-nonsense, quiet. He just does his talking on the track. He's not a huge personality, whereas by that point, Lando already had legions of fans because he's got this sort of cheeky, chappy, impish charm that people love. And he's well established. He's very, very fast. But when it came to qualifying pace, Piastri was always lacking a little bit compared to Lando. So Lando became the forefront of that McLaren, team. But by the time that we're coming to the end of last season, they obviously won the constructors, which was huge for McLaren, huge money-wise, investment-wise, morale-wise, momentum-wise. And the one thing that the Piastri side of the garage knew they needed to do, they basically said winter is all about getting your qualifying better because that's where the deficit is. And we're race 5 of this season and Piastri's leading the championship. Had an amazing qualifying and he's been absolutely on it. So I think Piastri's had a huge glow up of performance, but I think his confidence, I think he's just continually got more confidence. He's just ploughed down, kept his head down, out of drama and just kept going for it. And I think you're seeing the rewards of that now.
He has his head in the game.
Yeah, 100%.
Compared to Norris, where he's too much in his head.
Yeah.
How brilliant would it be for him to be able to say on his 3rd season in Formula One, he won the championship? That's just incredible.
Yeah. He's young as well. How old is this fucker?
And also, it gives a lot of hope for the current rookies as well. Because, obviously Antonelli has been doing, I think he's been doing amazing since the start of the season. And I can very much see Antonelli being on podium at some point in this season, but also potentially winning a Drivers' Championship in a few years' time. And if Piastri does win this year, then that doesn't seem too far away for the rest of them.
No, Oscar's 24, so he's very young, but he's showing a maturity beyond the years of his age currently. Talking about the psychology around Piastri, conversely, his teammate in the garage next to him, Andrea Stella, said this week about the crash that obviously Norris had in qualifying, which has kind of set up his race to not be as competitive because he was so far back. But he was saying that the car understeered a bit in turn 4 and he ended up on the outside curb. And then the outside curb was quite unforgiving. In a way, it was almost episodical. What's happening is an episode. It's an episode that I think starts from some of the work that we have done on our car. It made the car faster overall, but I think it took away from Lando in terms of predictability of the car once he pushes the car at the limit.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so they're sort of calling it episodes that Lando's having with the car, which I think is really interesting because he was obviously talking after the race and almost slightly self-conscious and a little bit defensive about the fact that everyone's saying, we've got the fastest car. I don't know why you keep saying that. It's a little bit old twaddle. Well, it isn't twaddle. But he's not performing at the level of which Piastri is. And I think he's got a lot of noise in his head currently, which is, it's sad to see because I think he's got all the elements that you'd want for a complete racing driver. There's nothing stopping him from being able to perform. But I think it's I've said it before, where you have momentum across a triple header. positive momentum is very powerful, but negative momentum is even more powerful. And I think that Lando's getting more and more self-conscious. He feels like the whole world's watching him fail. And I think he can still recover this. But I actually think what everyone's tuning into when we say Piastri is a clear favourite isn't always down to his driving. Because, I mean, Australia, he went over the wet grass. He ruined his race. It was a complete sloppy mistake. He's just quiet about it. He doesn't reveal as much to everybody in the media like Lando does, which I actually think is a very endearing trait from Lando. Yeah. But I don't think that it's helping Lando currently. I think he's getting too in his head. He's being too vocal. He's giving people explanations about where his head is at and why his performances aren't great. But in doing that, he's fueling the fire of why people don't think he's going to win. Well, he's always complaining. He's too in his head. Look at, well, I'm sitting here, if I'm talking about him now. So, I think it's a self-fulfilling prophecy of his own negative talk.
I will say, although he's not performing as well as he did at the start of the season, and maybe not performing as well as Piastri, he still did very well in this race.
Oh, yeah, brilliant recovery.
He started in 10th. And he went up to 4th, which is incredible, especially with a race that's as tough as Saudi Arabia, where it's too many corners and very high risk. So I think he still did very, very well today.
Yeah, no, he totally did. This is the difference between having a great race when you're not in the championship contending situation and when you have the spotlight of you are trying to win a championship. You're under more speculation and you're under more of a microscope. That's just the way it is. So I think that Lando is still learning how to deal with those external pressures. And I think that Piastri is doing his talking on the track. He keeps the media very as it is. He's not defensive or he doesn't come across a particularly emotional character. He seems like he's very even in the way that he thinks about things, but he's very pragmatic. And if you listen to his radio calls, no matter whether he's got 3 wheels on the car or he's just telling them my water doesn't work, the way that he communicates is very controlled and he seems like he's just at ease in any situation.
Very cool, calm and collected.
100%. And I think that is a huge contributing factor to his performances in this championship currently. I think the right driver is leading the championship right now.
Yeah, I agree.
I think we should talk about the team in red next. Obviously, going into the 2025 season, it was reported that Ferrari were going to change over 90% of their car. Looking at the results currently, last year they finished the Constructors' Championship in 2nd place and they're currently 4th place. So maybe they shouldn't have thrown away 90% of the work they had.
Maybe they should change it right back.
Yeah. But I mean, the woes for Lewis as he continues to struggle to get up to speed in his red car have continued a lot this race. He obviously started in P7 and he then ended the race in P7. He had some high IQ racing with Norris.
I loved watching that.
Yeah, very, very interesting for those that weren't following the sport in 2021. Lewis and Max had one of the most intense championship rivalry battles across that season. Jeddah was a brand new track for that season. It's only debuted on the calendar since 2021. So this is the 5th race we've had in Saudi Arabia. And I remember at that point in the season, things were really bubbling up tension-wise between Max and Lewis. And that evening was, aside from drama, chaos, penalties, collisions, words backwards and forwards, there was also a lot of talk about the DRS detection zone. That was a hot talking point, and Lewis kind of took that learning from 2021 and applied it brilliantly to his battles with Norris. Come on then, get him back if you want.
No, Lewis gets it.
Go on then.
Oh, there you go.
Damn. I really thought he was cooked there, but okay, fair enough. So Norris didn't get DRS, but Lewis did. So then Lewis just repassed him back with DRS, like what had happened in 2021.
Yeah.
That was a whole drama, wasn't it? That bloody white line became a whole story in itself.
There you go. Lap 15, he finally makes it work.
The whole contention around that is obviously that as they come up to that straight on the final corner, Norris was tucking behind Lewis and then he was overtaking him before the DRS detections line. The DRS detection line has a sensor running along it. So if you're behind a driver within 1 second, it will then allow that driver to have DRS so that the back of their flap on their rear wing will open. They'll get about 13 extra kilometres of speed, less drag, and they'll be able to power past. But Norris was doing it before that line happened. So then Lewis was behind Norris as he passed that line, which meant that Lewis's DRS flap opened. He then just followed Lando behind him, overtook him, and then Lando had to try that, which ended up meaning that Lando lost an unnecessary amount of time mucking about.
Yeah, it took him 3 laps to get past.
When it could have literally just been one.
It's like cat and mouse game.
Yeah, literally. But I thought it was very clever from Lewis. You could see the direct correlation of where he'd learnt that from the drama of Jeddah.
I know that these drivers obviously have lots to be thinking about as they're lapping, and also as, you know, just with the speeds that they're going at. It's impossible to think of everything. But I do think a lot of them aren't as aware of these like double DRS zones as they should be, because like, I mean, especially people who are such good talented racers, like we obviously saw it this week with Lando not thinking ahead of the fact that Lewis was going to get a double dose of DRS, trying to get past him. But we also had it in 2022 at the Bahrain Grand Prix with Charles Leclerc and Max Verstappen getting past him, doing it on the first DRS zone, knowing that, you know, the next time they passed it, Leclerc would take it right back again. And it's just like, no, just wait, bide your time, get to that DRS zone behind them, so then the second DRS straight that you have, then you get past and you actually keep it.
I think it sort of compounded the frustration that Lando was against. I think he recognised he didn't have many laps, he needed to get up the field. And I think if maybe he had just taken a minute, just sort of calmed it right down again, he probably would have done it quicker. But I think almost the pressure of knowing I need to get past this bloody car. And Lewis, you know, Lewis, his race wasn't with Lando, but he obviously was being very clever and was realising this error that Lando kept making. And on the third attempt, he did manage to get past.
And ultimately, holding him up like that probably helped Leclerc with his position on the podium.
That's true.
Yeah, very true. I mean, Lewis was raising concerns about the way the car was sliding around throughout the Grand Prix. And after the race, Lewis labelled his race as horrible and said that it was not enjoyable at all. Said he was sliding around. He had an understeer on the first stint. The car wasn't turning. Then massive deg in the second stint. Slightly better balance, but just no good. Pretty bad. Also, he's also doubled down and basically said, I can't even say to the team, this is the issue. I don't know what the issue is. And at the moment, there's no fix. This is just how it's going to be for the rest of the year. It's just going to be painful.
So he's already confirmed to himself and to other people that this is just how it's going to be for the end of the year, rather than try and fight it.
Blimey.
Yeah, so it goes on. He's yet to finish a Grand Prix ahead of his teammate Charles Leclerc, and the qualifying struggles he's had has increased the pressure he's feeling, obviously. It also was kind of giving me flashbacks of how he was talking in his final year at Mercedes last year, when he was struggling to be able to outcompete his teammate at the time, who was George Russell. So the downbeat, defeatist sort of way that he's talking, I hate it. I can't lie. I've watched Lewis race for many, many, many years. He made it into Q3 in Jeddah, but he lapped over half a second slower than Leclerc. And when asked after qualifying what he needs in order to gel with his Ferrari car, he simply replied, a brain transplant.
Oh,
yeah.
Oh, golly.
So he's also said that he knows that the fans aren't happy, he knows the team aren't happy, and he knows the bosses are not happy, and I'm not happy with my results.
I mean, it's not only disappointing to watch him talk in this very defeatist mentality, but also, as harsh as this sounds, it's a bit embarrassing on the Ferrari team. It's only 5 races in and he's already given up. And he said this is just how it's going to be.
Yeah.
I think it's easy to say he had the fastest car. He was always going to do that. But as you see with someone like Lando Norris, who's currently really buckling under the pressure and the external noise of having to try and win a championship.
What are you talking about? Why does everyone say that they have the fastest car? It's not even true.
I think you can see that you need a really strong competitive mindset to be able to achieve what Lewis has achieved. Even Sebastian Vettel, who is very close with Lewis, they've battled over the years. So he knows very well the adjustment in culture that you have to go into Ferrari. And he basically said, Lewis is statistically the best driver in the history of this sport. You don't get there by chance. He will have good fortunes. He will be able to turn this over. But I just think it's more than driving that he's struggling with. It's the whole way that you need to talk to a team, the way the team, works around you, being able to get that synergy, but he will get there. I'm paraphrasing, but that's basically what he said. But for me, I'm bored of the narrative of Lewis always being downbeat. This guy's not bad at qualifying. This guy's not bad at driving. It's not just that he's old. I just don't feel like he is able to translate how he wants to perform with how he's performing, because they are two worlds apart. And when you're looking at Charles Leclerc, even the way Charles Leclerc talks is a lot more positive. He sort of says, we brought an upgrade. It's not going to translate that well in Bahrain, but it might be better in Saudi. We'll have to give it a go. Yeah, it's frustrating, P3, I kind of want more than that, but, I'm really happy. Thank you to the team. But even the way that Leclerc is talking, saying the only way I can get gelling with my car is having a brain transplant. What the fuck? What did Ferrari do with that? That's what the fuck? I don't even know why they let him say that, to be honest with you. It's not painting the team out to be very good. It makes it sound like they've made such a hopelessly bad car that Lewis Hamilton, a 7-time world champion, can't get it to work. And if a champion of that caliber says they can't get it to work, then you're doomed. So PR-wise, it's a bit of a disaster for me.
It just doesn't seem like this is his passion anymore. He is a lot older than a lot of the other drivers like Oscar Piastri, like Lando Norris, Charles Leclerc, and they haven't won championships.
Yeah.
So they have that drive and they have the energy and they're going to keep fighting. Even if they're not doing as well, they're going to keep fighting because they have a goal that they want to reach. But Lewis has already reached those goals. He's created a legacy. Everyone knows that he's a brilliant driver. And I think him staying in F1 and acting this way and not giving it his all is just damaging his reputation. It's not to say just because he's old, it doesn't mean that he can drive, because I think you can be older and you can still drive. And obviously he's still fit enough to do that. The mentality is not the same.
Yeah. I mean, I just get sad watching him nowadays. It's such a shame because it seems like that light that he used to have and that love of racing is just gone.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like, I mean, whether you're a Lewis fan or not, watching him race has always been great because he is so good.
Yeah.
And now it's kind of like, oh.
If I was Fred Vasseur, my main question to Lewis would be, what happened in China that allowed you to get in that car, razz it round the corners with absolute vim and be able to get it on pole and then win the sprint race? And now we're here and you're saying I need a brain transplant to get attuned with my car. That for me would, if I was Fred Vasseur, I'd be getting Lewis in a room, just me and him, and talking man to man and saying, what's happened? What's not working here?
Yeah.
And we'll work through it periodically. But I don't want you saying in the press, I don't have a fix for it. It's just going to be a painful season. We've already had that talk from Lewis. And I think similarly with Lando Norris, I think the pair of them, the way they talk about their experience in the car, they wear their heart on their sleeves. You know what they're thinking when they're feeling it, which is a very endearing quality. But in this sense, I think it's lowering their stock without them really realizing it. And I think the same with Lando Norris is there's an insecurity behind people saying it's just the car that's good. It's nothing to do with you. And Oscar Piastri is doing so much better than you. You're not performing to the same level. He sort of regurgitates it back in a very defensive way because he must believe it. And I think the same with Lewis saying, I need a brain transplant. I don't know. The bosses aren't happy. No one's happy. Everyone's looking at me and I don't know what to do. And it's going to be painful. I think that he knows that this year was built up so much for him to have this sensational debut with Ferrari. And it's going the worst route you could have explained.
Yeah.
He had China's second race. It was like, bitch, okay, he's in this. But since then, he hasn't been able to outperform Charles Leclerc. I think Charles Leclerc really is maximising everything he has, but I think they need to bring more upgrades. I was expecting the upgrade that they brought to have kind of added a step in the right direction, but I haven't seen it really add that much performance to their car. I might be wrong, but look at the results. I haven't seen much else.
Going forward, I think he needs to think about it in more of a team mentality, because him not winning, he's out of the Drivers' Championship anyway. I don't think there's a chance for him to redeem himself and to actually, be competing against Oscar and Lando. I don't think he'd be able to win it, but him being so far away from Leclerc is detrimental to Ferrari for the Constructors' Championship. Well, when you compare that to Mercedes, for example, George Russell and Kimi Antonelli, yes, Kimi Antonelli hasn't been getting podiums, George Russell hasn't won a race, but because both of them have been consistently good and they haven't been that far away from each other, Mercedes is second in place for Constructors.
Yeah.
So I think Lewis needs to think about it in a way where, how do I make the team win, not just for me, but just for all of us.
Yeah, agreed.
Completely.
Well, this week, we've got a record breaker on our grid this week. Do you know who the record breaker is?
No.
They drive for a green team.
Kick Sauber.
No. A nicer green team.
Aston Martin.
Yes.
Fernando Alonso, most consecutive 0-point scoring for a driver champion.
No. Lance Stroll, who joined the grid in 2017.
God, this isn't going to be a good record, is it?
suffered his 75th Q1 elimination out of qualifying, surpassed Kevin Magnussen's 74th Q1 eliminations, and now Stroll is the driver to have suffered the most Q1 exits in the sport.
He's never beating the Nepo baby allegations.
That's not a good start.
Yeah, apparently he was already aware of this record that was going to be brought up, but it got brought up this weekend. He was like, yes, I am aware of what you're about to say. Thank you so much.
Can I ask how many qualifying sessions he has partaken in?
171, which isn't the best ratio, really, is it?
That is 43.8% of
Oh my God.
his qualifying sessions.
Yeah, it's not a title you want to hold.
No.
But that is that's a record that he's broken this weekend.
Well, congrats to K-Mag for no longer holding that record, I guess.
Yeah,
If we can't congratulate him for holding it.
Kevin's going to be made up with the fact that he hasn't got to hold that mantle anymore. But yeah, that's the record that Lance Stroll has managed to break. But if the rumours around Max Verstappen this last few race weekends continue to swirl around and some sort of fact gets spat out during silly season, maybe he won't have to worry about it. Maybe that could be his legacy, is that he had that many Q1 exits and then he had an exit from the sport.
Blimey.
I think he'd be happy to leave it. I don't think I actually would want to stay in it.
No.
I mean, since we're talking about Aston Martin, did we also discuss the fact that Alonso still hasn't got any points and was very vocal about hating the car, essentially, this race?
Yeah, weird hard carry from Stroll, actually.
That was not on my 2025 F1 bingo card.
No, it's weird because on one sense, it's like, oh, he's broken this record for basically being a bit crap and not being a very strong qualifier. He's driven quite a few tractors in his time, so it's also relevant to the cars that he's driven, because, it's not like he's been in, a Merc and then a Ferrari and then a Red Bull. He's just terrible at qualifying. He has been in cars that have been lower down in the field and pecking order. But at the same time as breaking this awful record, which is almost an insult, it's not even a record, it's just an insult, he's also then hard-cased all the points from Aston Martin have come from Stroll.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't really know what's happening with Fernando Alonso, but you can tell he's not at one with that car.
No.
It's a far cry from the 2023 dominance we had when we were seeing him up on podiums and winning races.
He had a dominance period?
Yeah, well, he's won two world championships, but then in 2023, Aston Martin came in with a straight heater and they were challenging Red Bull for race wins. So they just got the regulations in a sweet spot, got the car in a total sweet spot.
And then just completely dropped off again.
Yeah, the performance dipped. I think it was probably more that they kind of got to a bit of a ceiling with their car and their operating window, and then other teams around them.
Well, they bought an upgrade, didn't they, in 2023, that then suddenly saw their car just turn back into a pile of poo.
Yeah, the upgrades they brought actually ended up downgrading their performance. So then they had to remove those upgrades, and then they were kind of at a loss of what to do. So they got back to the same point they were at, where the car was comfortable, but at the same time their competitors around them were bringing upgrades that were correlating correctly. So their development race kind of meant that they flawed their own progress and then came tumbling down the order, and now here they are struggling for points. So Fernando Alonso is not happy with the car, clearly, but I'm genuinely very impressed by Stroll's performances, because thank God for Stroll, otherwise where would they be?
And that,
Did you ever think you'd say thank God for Stroll?
No.
No, not even close.
But that does open up the argument then that if they were to get rid of a driver next year to make room for Max, it is Alonso. Obviously, the Nepo baby argument for why Stroll would stay will still always exist. But the fact of Alonso not really doing well with the car, Max coming into a team where he's going to be driving a Honda engine that is designed by Adrian Newey, that makes perfect sense. And there's no real loss in getting rid of Alonso, because you are replacing a former world champion with a former world champion.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting one, because, I mean, Fernando Alonso hasn't been challenging for a championship for many, many years, but he has an incredible amount of high IQ. His reaction times are still very on point. Yeah. He's still very physically in shape. He's still very bloody good at driving a car. Yeah. So it's like, I can see exactly where you're coming from. It would make complete sense. Fernando Alonso is not invincible. At some point, you've got to, hang up the visor and say, I'm done. But what I'm finding weird is that he's normally able to extract the absolute maximum out of that car, and he's a much better qualifier than Stroll is. And I think his shrewd understanding of the rules and regulations, and he's also just got, I mean, he's almost like a, what the fuck has loads of eyes?
A spider.
He's like a spider.
Spiders have lots of eyes.
Yeah, but I don't think that translates as a thing. I can't say. It doesn't make any sense.
Like a hawk.
He's like an octopus. No, they've got loads of arms. He's like something with loads of eyes. In that when he's starting, especially when he's starting a race, you see him and his head is turning all over the place, looking in his mirrors, looking left. His spatial awareness is that of dreams.
He makes his car as wide as a bus.
Atta girl. So he's still got all of those wonderful attributes going for him, but it's whether or not, if Aston Martin's head will get turned by Max and they have the chance to put all their eggs in the Dutchman's basket, they're going to.
Yeah.
It makes absolutely no sense to hold on to Fernando Alonso when you can inherit a Max. Everybody wants a Max. So we'll have to see how that transpires. I just want to actually have a definitive answer soon, whether Max will be staying at Red Bull or actually moving.
I don't think you're going to get an answer anytime soon.
I agree, but I'm allowed to dream.
Well, you know what you tell us. Stick to your podcasting and I'll stick to my driving.
Oh, sassy.
But at least he knows we have a podcast.
Yeah. The exposure goes real.
I have a talking point.
Oh, yeah.
I want to talk about Racing Bulls.
Okay.
And I want to talk about Liam Lawson, but also Isaac Hadjar. Liam Lawson is a positive thing. I thought his driving was actually pretty good today. I think he kept up very well. He started in qualifying in 12th and still ended in 12th, but that's with a 10-second penalty that he ended up getting. Compared to the start of the season when he was with Red Bull and when he first moved to Racing Bulls, I think he's improved a lot, and I think he's getting back in the game. He still hasn't scored any points. He's still at 0, but I think in the next few races he might be able to score some points, because I genuinely thought today he could have made it to at least 10th.
I don't think Liam Lawson is a far cry away from being a regular point scorer in this season. I think that his ego and his heart and everything else and his pride took a right kicking earlier in the year when he obviously got demoted. I also think the noise around potentially Red Bull swapping the cars so that Red Bull would be driving the Racing Bulls car and the Racing Bulls would inherit the Red Bull car has significantly dropped off. The Racing Bulls are still doing very well in qualifying, but I'm noticing their race trim doesn't seem to be as strong as it was at the start of the season. I also think comparatively between Racing Bulls and Red Bulls, that is just hugely down to the work that Red Bull do in that garage. Every single race weekend, Max has come in and said the car is basically an absolute hunk of junk. I can't do anything with it. And then comes to qualifying and then the race, and it's a completely different story. And although it's not perfect, not in the best operating window for the sweet spot,
they managed to make something decent out of it.
Yeah, they're able to recover it. So I do think that noise has gone away, and I think that the Racing Bulls general pace hasn't been as on it as it was a few race weekends ago. One thing has improved, I think, is Liam Lawson's confidence is starting to come back. And I think that's what you need for him to start scoring points, battling people, getting involved, having maybe more punchier strategies, being a bit more vocal on the radio. I think maybe by the summer break, we might start seeing the Liam Lawson that lots of us have come to know and enjoy watching racing, but that will take time.
Yeah. And I also think Isaac Hadjar did very well this race because he started in 14th for qualifying and then he ended up in 10th. And I think he's just been, like, to me, he's been consistently impressive. Obviously, he's not on the same level as some of the other rookies like Kimi Antonelli and Ollie Behrman with his driving, although he's not been scoring that many points either. His driving has still been very, very impressive, but I think he's getting there. And I think today, overall, the performance of Racing Bulls was something to be very proud of.
Yeah, I agree.
During Bahrain, the last race we went to when we were in Bahrain, Dr. Helmut Marko is obviously in charge of the young driver program over at Red Bull and is on top of that hugely involved with driver lineup and car performance and is, one of the figureheads of the team. His head and many others at Red Bulls was turned by Isaac Hadjar's pace in practice. And he basically said to the media that we found he's a real one, like he's a proper big one here. And out of the 4 Red Bull and Racing Bull cars on track at the time, Isaac was going faster than even Max. So I think to say that Isaac Hadjar is in the best but most terrifying position of being a king in waiting without realising it for that seat that everyone sort of wants but doesn't want all at the same time. He's doing a good job at potentially being put in a worse car with a lot more speculation around him. But I think the fact that every single race weekend we basically say, God, isn't Isaac great? I don't really have any drawbacks. What?
And a cutie.
Okay. He's a young few, darling. But I feel like every race weekend we talk, and every episode we basically say, He's just good, isn't he? He's just well good. Because I think, Isaac had that awful heartbreaking moment in Australia for his first debut. Dr. Helmut Marko was actually really quite nasty and basically said, like, why is he crying for? And now here he is, at Bahrain being like, he's pretty good though, isn't he?
Yeah.
That tells you people have a short memory when it comes to Formula One. But I think Isaac would do very well to carry on as he is. And I think in the next couple of seasons, I think hopefully getting promoted. If it was me, I would want him to get promoted into a Red Bull. I think he's too cutesy for it. But what can you do? It might happen.
He does have his own demons that he's battling.
Ooh.
What?
His drink.
His what?
His drink system in his...
Why the fuck would you say it like that? That's like it's an alcoholic. Why would you say it like that? Why did you say it like that? That is besmirching his name so badly. I was like, what about it? What's really in the Red Bull can, Isaac? Word things better, woman.
No, his drink system in his car, which is water, I would assume, maybe some electrolytes. I don't know. Sorry, Isaac. No, it keeps leaking on him.
What talking point is this?
His drink system in his helmet keeps leaking.
Isn't that Oscar Piastri that had that?
No, Isaac as well.
Okay.
And he essentially said to his team, like, just get rid of it. I don't need drink because it's just all over my face.
Oh my God, ice in the veins. It kind of makes me love him more. That he just also lighter in the car. More performance. Maybe he doesn't care about the drink system at all. He just wants to go faster.
I mean, Isaac, Liam Lawson, Kimi Antonelli, all of the rookies, I think that's, to me, what makes F1 so exciting is because all of these rookies, they have such a drive, they have such passion, and you can see it. And I mean, with Liam Lawson, I know I was hating on him at the beginning of our podcast season, and that was because of his big ego when he first started. But what he went through being replaced at Red Bull, it's a lot to go through so young in your career, and just starting out in F1. And it's honestly, it warms your heart seeing him gain his confidence back. And I think with all of these rookies, what we'll see is no matter what knocks them down, they're still going to have that passion. They're still going to get back up again. They're still going to fight. I can recognize that what he's been through is not fair. This was out of his control, and this wasn't where he was meant to be to begin with, while also recognizing that he still had traits in the beginning that were unlikable. But he's grown.
Okay.
Question. What do you dislike more, an aggressive driver or a snitch?
Oh, I'd say maybe I don't know. That's a hard question.
Grand Prix, we ask the tough questions.
Because aggression can be justified. I mean, Max's aggression, for example, can go two ways. Sometimes he can go too far to the point where he becomes a bully on the track and he pushes the other drivers away. And it gets to a point where it becomes dangerous for other drivers and he can crash into them. And that sort of aggression, I don't agree with, because I don't think that's a way to play a game fairly. But also, when it's aggression but without hurting anyone and it's just to win a race because he has that drive to go and win the race, then that's justified aggression.
Okay, and what about snitching?
I don't think snitching is valid, but it's not really that big of a deal.
But the snitching can be justified because they're trying to get higher up in the points.
Yeah, but the higher-ups are going to see it anyway.
I don't think that Max saying that Lando was long in his pit box is snitching. That's just being clever.
I think it was snitching.
It's not. It's he knows the rules and the regulations well enough to know that will get picked up. And he's not saying it to his race engineer. He's saying it so the stewards will pick it up. And eventually they did anyway.
And even if snitching, man.
Yeah, they're not on the same team. They don't care. They want the advantage. And he knows that Lando's in a faster car. So he's like, well, that's not okay. Going to let him know that that's going to get penalised.
So it's justified.
Yeah.
Okay. Then maybe aggression.
Okay.
It's aggression.
Right, well, since we've spoken about Liam Lawson, we should talk about Yuki Tsunoda as well. Him and Pierre Gasly had their first lap incident, little tap of the wheel, smack into the wall, and suddenly their races were both over, bringing out the safety car. So, yeah, another pointless outing for Yuki Tsunoda, just saying.
Oh. Gasly's out.
Tsunoda's up and running though.
Is he? Mm-hmm. I'm quite surprised at that.
Poor Gasly.
He didn't hit the wall as much as Gasly did.
Yeah. I feel bad for Gasly though. He had such a good race.
Oh, engine off. He's out.
Oh, he's out.
That's 2 out within the second lap.
Yeah, it's a funny one, really, because even though Yuki Tsunoda hasn't been up in the fight, sort of battling away with the top teams that you have seen Max doing, I actually still don't think that Yuki's doing a bad job. I actually think that because of how tight everything is, that you could lose 0.3 in qualifying and it can land you in P8, such as he was. Looking at both the onboard from Yuki and also Pierre, I kind of like 50-50. I couldn't really tell you whose fault it really was, but either way, it doesn't help Red Bull where they currently are with their constructors, because they need a significant amount of points to be able to take the fight to the other teams around them. And I mean, Ferrari scored 21 points this race, and Max was the only point scorer in Red Bull, and he got 18 points. So they're already being outscored because the rest of the top teams around them are having 2 people and 2 challenges in the fight. And currently Yuki isn't quite in contention. I think he's getting up to speed well, but lap 1 collisions where you're crashing into a wall is not helping anybody, is it? You might as well put your feet up, have a cup of tea and not turned up.
Yeah.
So
I felt really bad for Gasly with the crash, and just for Alpine generally, because they did so well during the Bahrain Grand Prix. And Gasly especially did an amazing race. And I feel like if he didn't crash in the first lap, Gasly would have done very well in this race as well, because over the weekend, first practice session, I think Gasly scored the highest. He was the fastest. It's just disappointing for him to be out so soon. And I'm sure he was probably heartbroken by that as well.
Now it seems that slowly they've started to have a bit more stability within that team. And I don't think that goes unnoticed, especially for the team environment. But suddenly they've got the monocoque that's a year old, and yet they've got this car that's seeming to come alive. I think the only thing they've got to worry about is that Doohan isn't quite in the same level of the fight as Gasly is. I wouldn't expect a rookie to be that up to speed. Kimi Antonelli's in the background. What about me? But
he's an anomaly.
Exactly, complete anomaly, because I would expect Doohan to be further back than Gasly, because I don't think Jack's doing a bad job. I think he's had a bit of a shitty start to his season. I think he's had a lot of, self-induced errors, a couple of things outside of his control. I think he's getting up to speed. Gasly is definitely the horse you're backing in the Alpine team currently.
Oh, yeah.
So it was disappointing to not see what he could have done in that race.
Yeah.
Because, if you remember, after sort of chaotic Sao Paulo Grand Prix, they were in podium spots.
Yeah.
And it brought them from P9 in the constructors all the way up to P6, and they managed to secure that. So it would be nice to see them be able to either hold on to P6, maybe challenge a little bit more with this new run of pace. And it mixes up the midfield. So it's nice to see them improving. I don't actually know how they managed to improve as much as they have, though.
Yeah,
I don't know what it is. If there's a massive upgrade that's happened, Pierre Gasly's hair transplant is just taking hold and it's giving him more brain power.
Talking to from Flavio Briatore. Yeah, and they're gonna get fired.
I don't know what it is, but it's strange. But whatever the upturn in performance is, it's working for him. But you have to finish races to get points. So, points gets prizes. So the fact that 1 lap incident happened, I don't believe that Doohan got any points either at the end of that. So, it's a race weekend lost for them, unfortunately. The only thing they can take comfort from is that they were showing good pace on Gasly's side of the garage, and that they've got more data to be able to hopefully bring up some upgrades so they can continue that trend of good performance.
Alrighty, shall we move on to Reams recap?
I'm scared.
We have a new Drivers' Champion leader in Oscar Piastri.
Well done to Oscar Piastri. I think he's got his head in the game, and I think we're going to continue to see him succeed.
Max drags his Red Bull up onto a podium spot.
Well done to Max. I think he kind of fucked himself over at the beginning of this race with the penalty, but overall he's done very well in this race and very well during qualifying, which is a big improvement since last week.
Lap 1 collisions see Yuki and Gasly out of the race.
Very heartbreaking, because it was neither of their fault, and I think we could have seen a lot of potential from the both of them, and it was just gone.
Well, I mean, they didn't crash into air.
I know they crashed in the wall, but it was
also very heartbreaking. Is not the reaction you gave at the time.
I was like, "Ooh, exciting
crash. Safety car, fun."
No, but I mean, it's heartbreaking because you don't get to see them. It's just so early in the race, so you don't actually get to see what they could have done, and I think they could have done really well.
Okay, someone on a balcony was flashing a red light, confusing Oscar Piastri.
Oh, I don't know what to say about that.
Do you remember him saying that?
Yeah, I do remember. It's very well attentive. Is that the word?
Very well attentive.
Very attentive.
It's an official quote. Ferrari's woes continue.
Hamilton needs to get his shit together.
Fair. What about Leclerc?
Leclerc, I think he needs to push a bit harder, but he's doing as best as he could currently.
The silent assassins of the Silver Arrows maintain their point scoring positions.
What does that mean?
What?
Mercedes, their nickname is the Silver Arrows.
I couldn't have said that. How beautiful was that?
That was a headline. Dumb them down.
Yeah, okay, got it.
You know what Mercedes is doing? As a team, they're doing great. They're, again, very consistent, driving very well, but it's going to get a bit boring. Someone needs to push a bit more. I mean, I want to see Kimi Antonelli fighting for podium, and I want George Russell fighting to win.
Lance Stroll sets a new record.
I mean, good for Lance Stroll, but also, why is he in the race?
He's the main point scorer for Aston Martin. Thank God he's
because Fernando Alonso's so shit.
Hey!
Lando Norris takes his McLaren from P10 to P4.
I'm very happy for Norris. I think he did very well during the race, but I think he needs to stop being in his head so much.
Carbono get a double points finish for Williams.
Who?
Carbono?
What's that?
Carlos and Albon. That's their sort of like ship name.
That's meant to be your man's.
Sounds
like your free ship name.
But that sounds like a pasta dish. Carbono.
I thought you started talking about Bono as in Antonelli's new engineer.
No. What would you and Carlos Sainz's ship name be?
No.
Okay. Moving on from Ream's recap, let's go to our Grand Prix podium.
Oh my God, I haven't even prepared any of this. Who are we doing as Prick? Ooh.
Well, that's what we discuss now.
Yes.
Not everything has to be pre-planned.
That's true.
Okay, so who are we going to say our prick of the Jeddah Grand Prix is? Ream, I'm going to come to you first.
Ooh, okay. I know we've already put him as our prick before, but I think it's worth putting Lewis Hamilton as the prick again, unfortunately. I don't know. It's not even that his driving has just not been that great. It's the fact that his entire demeanor, his entire attitude about racing and about F1 currently is just so defeated. And it's like, what's the point of you even staying in F1 if this is the way that you're going to act? And you're dragging your entire team down with you. So if I were to see him during the interviews actually putting in a bit more of a fight and really trying, I would say, okay, maybe he's still not getting the hang of the car. He's still not getting the hang of being around a new team, but he's trying at the very least. The fact that he's not, that makes him a prick to me.
Damn, okay. That's all very valid.
Yeah, I think that is valid. I think it shows how much what you say to the world in the press can really change your mindset around how you think a driver is acting, because I'm sure Lewis in the background is working really hard, but the way that he's presenting it to the media, it always feels like he's got an excuse up his sleeve and there's always something bigger he needs to complain about, as opposed to saying, yeah, I'm just not getting my head around this car, and that's the fact. It's always put it in quite vague sort of details around why it's not quite coming together, but saying things like, I need a brain transplant, is not the Lewis that people around the world love to watch race. That just isn't him. So he's very much out of sorts at the minute. So I think it's fair.
Yeah. Are you agreeing then?
I don't want to. The problem is I don't want to give Lewis prick again because
because he's going to see it and he's going to get in his head and then he's going and then he's going to say, I need a name change.
No, because the performance in China was so brilliant. That was the Lewis.
But we're talking about Jeddah.
I know we're talking about Jeddah, but the performance we saw in China is the Lewis that people have come to know and love. And I feel like that Lewis is still somewhere in the background. He's just gone on holiday. And I feel like giving him prick again, when realistically he maintained his position this race, he didn't go backwards, I feel like might be overly harsh. But I also am struggling to think of someone else that I would give prick to? If you know who you're going to give it to, then you go and I'll keep thinking.
I was actually going to say Lando.
Interesting.
As my prick for the Jeddah Grand Prix, based on the fact that he just isn't holding himself together. And, he crashed out in qualifying in Q3, meaning he was starting from 10th. And ultimately, that's what cost him the championship lead. The fact that he was starting in 10th and wasn't able to climb his way up high enough to be able to maintain his lead. He's essentially given his teammate his trophy.
Comparative going from 10th to 4th is a very good recovery drive.
But he should never have been in that position to begin with.
Yeah, in the context of what he's trying to fight for, 4th is not going to get you a championship at the end of the year. It might get you constructors, but it's not going to get you drivers' championship. So I can see that. See, I like both of those answers.
You're going to say Lewis?
I think I'll go with Lewis. I think I have to go with Lewis. I really don't want to give Lewis that because I think he's capable of a lot more than what he's showing right now, but what he's showing isn't worthy of being anything other than prick behaviour.
Fair enough. Do you want to tell us who your grand is?
My grand?
I have a grand.
Who's your grand?
Oh, thank you for asking.
Go on.
My grand is going to be Carlos Sainz.
He's had a quiet race, but I think that's actually a very good shout.
He has had a quiet race. He finished in 8th place. For a large chunk of the race, he was doing what he did in Singapore 2023 when he was leading, essentially keeping the cars behind him in DRS range to protect them. So he was staying in DRS range of Albon so that Albon would have DRS on him, so that when Hadjar had DRS on Albon, he wasn't able to overtake as easily because he basically created a bit of a DRS train.
Yeah, like an artificial DRS train his own doing. Yeah, and
managed to preserve the 8th and 9th position and subsequent points for the team.
I felt sorry for Hadjar because he was, after the race, he was very, very well aware that that's what they would do.
Yeah.
And he was kind of like, yeah, it's great for them, but like, ouch. Ouch for me. So yeah, I think Carlos Sainz, I think he qualified in P6, which I thought was a very good qualifying for him. And he'd been previously saying that he was just struggling to unlock that last bit of performance that Albon was able to get in Q3. But that does not seem to be a problem for him currently. I think that he's starting to get what we're after Lewis getting is what Carlos is getting. So he's getting there with qualifying. He's already been a great qualifier anyway. But I think he's integrating into that team better and better. And the teamwork from him and Albon today was really nice to see. Reem, who's your grand?
Well, I'd love to give it Sainz, obviously, but I'll choose someone different just for the sake of us talking about someone different. I think I'll give it to Isaac Hadjar because I think he did a brilliant race and he went up from 14th in qualifying to 10 finishing the race, and I think he has a lot of potential. So he did a great job. I'll give it to him.
The problem with Isaac Hadjar for me is that his performances are so consistently good. I'm like, he's just good though. It's similar to with Kimi Antonelli, is like he has standout performances, but where I'm used to seeing that caliber of racing from him, I almost don't see it as a standout performance. But I guess that's actually a positive for Isaac. But I think he's a good contender for it. My grand is going to Charles Leclerc.
Okay.
I think Charles, comparatively to his teammate, I mean, he's beating Lewis in qualifying non-stop. He's beating him in the race non-stop. I think his whole attitude towards the car, the team, and where Ferrari are currently sitting is a lot more positive. I think that he seems like he's more open and collaborative and is able to coherently tell the team what he needs from the car. He's also just driving it better. And I know that he's been in the team, he's established in that team, has been there for many years, but he's also struggling with the car currently. And the car isn't where Ferrari were hoping it would be. They're obviously struggling to ride it low to the ground where they wanted it to. They rode it at the height that would have worked for them in China. They both got disqualified. They've now had to lift it a little bit up. They've brought upgrades. But through it all, I think Charles has really extracted everything he could from the car. Is he disappointed with the fact it can't be further up the field? Yes. But I think his driving this season has been phenomenal because we've known that Charles can overcook the limits here and there when he's under pressure, and we know he makes silly little mistakes when it really matters. Have not seen that so far. So I think he's done a brilliant race, and I think to come home in P3 with a car that really isn't that fast at the minute, I think is very impressive.
Fair. I was actually going to give Leclerc Grand Prix this week because I thought he did a very good job of managing to keep his car in a good place. He obviously was struggling a little bit at the start, but managed in the second half of it to really start pushing forward. And he ultimately got Ferrari their first podium of the year. not including the sprint?
Yeah, no, I think coming into this year, Charles had probably quite a lot of stress on his chest for the fact that he's meant to be the leader of this team, and suddenly we've got a 7-time world champion coming in that's taking photos like he's a mafia boss in front of the house in Maranello, and is coming in this beautiful suit, and everyone's, oh my God, it's Lewis Hamilton. He was probably thinking in the background, like, hello, I still race for this team, what the fuck? But his performances has cemented him as the number one driver for Ferrari, and doing that against Lewis Hamilton is very hard to do. So yeah, I think the Grand Prix for Charles, I think, is very fair. Right?
I know this is obvious, but I think I'm gonna give my Grand Prix to Oscar Piastri, because I think he did a brilliant race, and I mean, this is his second win in a row, and he's had 3 wins from 5 races, which is more than anyone else has. And I think his head is so clear, and it's very obvious to see that in such a comparison to Lando Norris as well. And I think he very much is on the path to winning the Drivers' Championship. I can see that for him this year. I think he would deserve the Grand Prix title for that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I think Piastri's on a roll. I've said it before, where it's like sometimes it's not just positive performances that you do that affect your mental focus for the sport, but it's also momentum. Sometimes you just come into race weekend after weekend after, especially with a triple header where you have no time in between to go back to the factory, to be able to decompress, be able to take your mind off racing. It's back in the simulator, traveling here, traveling there, onto the next track, onto the next debrief. But I think that he's carried through a beautiful amount of momentum, and it's clearly paid off. It's a funny one, because if we were doing it just based on who was my Grand Prix on Saturday, it would be Max Verstappen, because I think that lap came out of literally nowhere. And I think people say a lot of the time, like, oh, he's outperforming the car. You can't outperform the car, but Max makes the difference in that car that looks like a hunk of junk. If we're being incredibly unfair, we saw Lawson at the start of the year drive it. It just looked impossible to drive. Yuki Tsunoda makes it look a bit sluggish and a bit difficult. Max makes it look like it should be at the front of the field. And that is just down to how he's able to drive around all of these issues that the car has. But the fact that he was giving the McLarens a run for their money, Mercedes are just similarly far away from the McLarens, and neither Merc driver have been able to put up the challenge and the fight the same way that Max has. And I think every time that Max is down on his luck performance, he comes out swinging with these amazing moments. So I think that it was kind of dampened down because of him sort of lunging it down in turn 1 and then going wide, getting a 5-second time penalty. I thought it was a bit below his caliber. And I thought it was an antic he didn't need to do, because the car seemed like it had a lot of pace in it. He wasn't struggling, but I just think that Oscar Piastri had it in the bag, and it was just very no nonsense from Piastri. But I think that Max's performance on Saturday has given me the reason to think that he should be a Grand Prix.
Ooh. So now I have to choose between Max, Piastri and Charles for the Grand Prix.
Yes.
Yeah. Right, wait, who are we putting as our prick?
Both of us agreed it would be Lewis, so we'll put it as Lewis.
Okay. And then Grand. How about, because you said Grand for Leclerc.
Yeah.
You said
Isaac
Hadjar, and I said, who the fuck did I say?
I have actually no idea.
Science. I said science.
I'm happy to give Grand to Charles.
So then it's between Verstappen or Piastri for Grand Prix.
Ooh. I lean more towards Piastri, because I don't think we can appoint a Grand Prix to someone who got a penalty for, frankly, disgusting behaviour.
I was going to put him as my Grand Prix if it wasn't for that penalty. I think that was just a bit of a stupid mistake.
He's better than that.
Yeah, I agree. It kind of dampened it a little bit, doesn't it? That's on him. Fair enough.
Okay, so our prick is Lewis Hamilton.
Yikes.
Again. Honey.
Get yourself together. I can't even believe this.
Our Grand is Charles Leclerc, and our Grand Prix is Oscar Piastri, the new leader of the Drivers' Championship. And there you have it. That is the Jeddah or Saudi Arabian Grand Prix episode, and we will be back next week.
Oh, God.
With an episode all about tyres.
Oh, God. And next week, I will not be in this episode.
She is joking. She contractually has to be here.
It's true. It's true.
And we're doing an episode on tyres next week because there's no race, and we just want to, keep pumping out content and education for reading.
Will you be giving me a quiz at the end of the episode?
Happily, yes.
Oh, God.
For those that are listening to the episodes now and thinking an episode about tyres sounds incredibly dull, grow up. No, grow up. Because tyres and strategy and all of that side of the sport is incredibly, incredibly important. And guess what? Do you know why it's important? The wheels are the only part of the car that touches the ground. So in that reason, they're quite important. Yes, I've already started doing my research.
Well, I'll just say I've had a message from someone who is saying that they are ready to learn and really excited to learn about tyres. So
Nav's mum is such a big fan.
It was my sister.
Shout out to
That's the biggest fan.
Yeah, no, we're going to be doing an episode on tyres, and you will be there, and you will be listening, and you will be asking insightful questions, I hope, and you will pass the test.
It's a stretch.
And you will enjoy it.
I will try my best.
All right, so we will see you next week to learn all about tyres. But in the meantime, why don't you give us a follow on our socials? You can find us on TikTok, X, Instagram, and YouTube. And while you're there, since you're already clicking buttons, click the like button and maybe the comment button. And fuck it, the share button too. Send us to a friend.
Do people normally say fuck it when they're talking about their socials?
We make the rules. And since you're doing all of that with our socials, you might as well do it with our show as well. Give us a rating, leave a comment. Again, share us with a friend. Spread the love.
Spread the love. We sound so millennial.
I'm Gen Z, thank you.
Okay, act like it.
I'm a boomer.
You actually are.